Good Tuesday to you again, everybody in Gov 603. Welcome to the second video for week 6, in which we review the questions and your answers from week 5. Ba-boom! And unfortunately, by this time I'm all out of coffee. Maybe just a dregs, maybe just the dregs. Better than nothing. Okay. Let's take a look at the questions from last week. We are looking again at some terminology and why it's important. Okay, so question number 1, what is external validity and why is it a characteristic of good research design? Cynthia, you boom, hit the nail right on the head. External validity assesses the degree to which the findings of a study can be generalized to a larger population, setting or time beyond the specific conditions or participants of the original study. Excellent. That you could make that into a one-sentence answer, and that is absolutely perfect, because ultimately the goal of empirical research is to be able to find out something that's useful to the public at large, or at least that subset of the public that you're studying. So for instance, let's say, I know we're in poli-sci here and government, but let's say you were studying menthol cigarettes, and if they have any additional impacts on smokers. So your findings would only be applicable to the segment of the population that smoked, and within that, the segment of the population that smoked cigarettes. But you'd want them to have some applicability. You want them to have some validity outside of your study. This is where we get the term external validity. So you need to set your study up in such a way that you gather the data and the participants in such a way that there are no errors that creep in. So they're gathered randomly. They're tested the same. There's a control group that is you test those who don't smoke at all and those who do smoke that smoke no menthol cigarettes. So you design your study in such a way that the findings of the study are as applicable as possible to the general public outside of your study. And that's where we get the term external validity. Okay. Question number 2, briefly explain the difference between large N and small N case studies. Now, this week, you're going to learn the difference between, why you use capital N and lowercase n when you're talking about research. But for right now, we're confining that to large case studies, small case studies. Okay, Melissa, the difference between large N and small N case studies is that large N involves comparison of many cases, small N involves intensive study. Okay, focusing mainly on one case study in analytic depth. Okay, you may decide to use one over the other depending on the design and goals of the study. That excellent answer, Melissa. And often small N case studies are used as pilot studies, because sometimes when you're researching a phenomenon, especially when you're talking about human behavior, and especially you're talking about human behavior in the age of social media, in which the most remote and minuscule of behaviors become amplified, and the discussion thereof dominates the public, conversation. I mean, seriously, how many people out there were really eating Tide Pods, the little detergent pods? Okay. But the discussion of people eating Tide Pods dominates the culture. Okay. So if you want to find out if there's any if there's actually a phenomenon, you might do a pilot study with a small number of participants, that is lowercase n. But if you want good external validity, you need a research design with a larger number n. Typically, when you're doing quantitative research, you need at least 300 participants to have good external validity, or what's said in the business is statistically significant results. Now, be careful of how you interpret your findings when you're researching or the findings of others. The best that we can do is say, statistically speaking, the odds are, and we actually use a ranking system. strong, moderate, low, no, that what we're seeing by way of behavior, effect of one variable on another within a study is going to be happening out in the general populace. We can never say with absolute certainty that this is happening out in the general populace based on what we see within our study. So, you got to be careful about that. Okay. Question number 3. Briefly discuss the various hypotheses listed in Chapter 4 of Pounder using 2 hypotheses selected as a model. Construct construct 2 or more hypotheses of your own. Okay. So I wanted you to get familiar with these, all right? And there's a lot you could have done. Well, a lot, I mean, on 4. Natalie, let's take it. 2 types of hypotheses are the null and alternative. Null hypothesis is a statement of no effect or no difference. A null is also used to say, nothing happened. So you could say, you could say extending voting hours at a voting place. Here's your hypothesis. Extending voting hours at polling places, talking about elections, is positively correlated with participation among elderly voters or voters 65 and up. So in other words, your hypothesis is the longer the voting place stays open, the greater number of voters who are 65 and up will participate. Well, if that doesn't occur, then you can say that the null hypothesis has been proven, meaning nothing's happened. Okay? Keeping the hours of the polling place open longer did not increase the number of voters 65 and older. Okay? So you're right. Natalie, null hypothesis. The alternative hypothesis is, as you point out, is the opposite of the null hypothesis. It proposes that there is a significant effect, difference, relationship, or pattern in the population. So in many ways, the alternative hypothesis is the supporting the demonstration of the hypothesis that you've put forward. And you give a couple of examples here. So good job. So make sure that you understand that, everybody. Null hypothesis, alternative hypothesis may appear somewhere else, like on your midterm exam. And if you don't understand it, email me and I'll help you straighten it out. Okay. Question number 4, briefly discuss the differences between the qualitative and quantitative research methodologies. Then I asked you to put a link. Christopher, I like what you're doing here. Excuse me. Qualitative research uses words, images, sounds to explore subject experiences, opinions, attitudes. Qualitative research methods includes interviews, observations. Qualitative data is analyzed by grouping the data into categories and themes. Quantitative research uses numbers and statistics to assess a topic in detail. Quantitative research method includes measuring and counting. Okay, exactly right. And then Jared, right underneath there, you were even briefer and more to the point. Qualitative research, this type of research aims to gather and analyze non-numerical data. Perfect. Quantitative, this type of research that aims to gather and analyze numerical data. Perfect. Remember the difference between those two. Now there's a third way, a third path, if you like, within research method that I personally like, and it's called a mixed methodology in which you use both quantitative and qualitative. Qualitative research methodology is good to telling you there's something going on. It's not so good at telling you why that something is going on. Right? You need to sit down and talk to the research participants, those who took the survey, and ask them open-ended questions that don't bias their response, questions that don't make them think that you're looking for a particular answer or not. That approach, which is not good research, is frequently used during political campaigns, and someone will call you up and say, "Oh, I'm taking a poll for, pick a candidate." And I'm not picking on anybody, but let's say Governor DeSantis. We're calling on behalf of Governor DeSantis, and we're taking a poll. So they start out saying they're taking a poll, but what they're really doing is pushing a particular item from Governor DeSantis's platform. So we're taking a poll. Do you support the wasting of millions of your tax dollars by supporting the war in Ukraine. Okay, so the language in that question is pushing you into a direction. That's known as a push-pull, right? It's advancing an agenda, not trying to seek out data by way of your response. All right. So whether it's qualitative on its own or it's mixed methodology in which you're using qualitative and quantitative, make sure that you understand how to construct a qualitative study and questions that don't push the recipients towards an answer. And sometimes that happens and the researcher doesn't do it on purpose, but that's the way it works out. Okay. All right, everybody. Have a great rest of the week. I will look through your paper, part 1, grade them this week. Spend some time going back and looking at the discussion boards and answers to the questions, okay, in preparation for your midterm exam. And, remember that I'm praying for you and thinking about you, and I will see everybody on Canvas. All right, bye-bye.